Good afternoon. This is Dan again, coming to you on the Spiritual Underground podcast. We are on location today at a pretty special place here in New Albany. We're at a women's recovery home called The Breakaway. I'm sitting here. Today's guest is the founder of that, and we'll get back to that in just a minute, but I want to make sure I talk to you about spiritualunderground.org. You can go there and get links to the podcast. There's a contact me page, so if you want to get a hold of me and talk to me about this stuff, I'll be willing to help you, or I'm also open, really want to get any feedback I can get from people. And the music around the podcast is brought to you by Darren Frank. Really want to make sure he gets his credit here. You'll hear a little bit of it in the beginning of the podcast, and then towards the end, I'll play a whole song. And 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, the book by James Christopher Cohn, is available on Amazon. You can get that in a Kindle, or you can get that in a hard copy, and there are now 2 volumes, so you can get the whole thing, or for some, if you just want to get one piece of it, he's broke it in 2 now, so you can actually get it in 2 volumes. One of them is the way the spiritual sickness invades us, for those that maybe don't have the isms, the alcoholism or the addiction. Let you know how just how our spirits get stepped on as we walk along in life, and the second part of it is the actual step work, the mechanics of it. So you can get that in 2 pieces now if you want to. Amazon has that 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cohn. And finally, go to DTM Woodwork, dtmww.net. If you have any woodworking needs, refinishing, custom woodwork, go out there and take a look at that. That's my little side gig. So back to today's guest. I've been trying to get with Lisa for some time now to get her story, and she's a really busy person, and she was had a little particular project that she needed to get behind her before she wanted to do this, and that happened in May. The dancing, what is it called?
Breakaway dancing.
Breakaway dancing. So it's a fundraiser for the Breakaway, right?
Yes.
Essentially. Yeah. So she did that. So welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you did. I get a little worried, and I'll just speak it to. I go, well, maybe somebody just doesn't want to, and that's okay. You know, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to feel like I coerce somebody to, and I know that we're also busy too. You know, so I was getting to go, man, I hope she don't think I'm like overpressing her to come. But we met, and you've had a huge impact on me, and it's really been your story is just fantastic, and I just have been wanting to get it recorded here so that other people can hear it. I'll be frank on this account too. You know, I read the newspaper about you and that kind of stuff, and it's always in these little bitty clips and this kind of thing. You know, and I'm not sure that you're like and we walk around to 12-Step Recovery and talk our story, so those people hear the real story. But you know, the real story doesn't get out there really. It comes out in sound bites and through the mainstream media, for lack of a better way to say that. So hoping that maybe this will be a little more in depth about what the miracles that happened in your life and how you got there. So the way I always start with people, my little deal is just to start with an easy question, and I should have probably prompted you beforehand, but I think it's important that we have a sobriety date. So I always ask somebody what their sobriety date is, and then and we'll talk a little bit about how you were raised and walk down the path that brought you to here.
Okay. Well, my name's Lisa, and I'm an alcoholic addict, and my sobriety date is August the 6th of 2013.
That is cool. That's so we met in 2014 at Jerry's meditation meeting. I'm pretty sure, if my memory is correct. I remember, and you were having your legal issues at the same time that I was having mine, and that kind of put a connection. You know, when we can walk along and we go, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm in the same boat, you know, or similar boat when we're dealing with things, the consequences of what the disease, the addiction and alcoholism did to us. So I will remember that forever.
Yes, I remember you sharing a little bit because you gave me hope because you had pled out and was on, I think, house arrest as well when I met you.
Yeah, I couldn't really remember exactly how the timeline, and I also say that when I tell my own story, if I go back and actually try to do it in chronological order, it really doesn't work. You know, I can't really put it, the timeline doesn't work. I can't put pieces together. Now, I know it's all the truth, but I can't go, and so I actually hesitate, and I make sure that people don't go, well, it was August, and they try to pull dates, like real hard dates, because the listener really doesn't care if it was August the 3rd or October the 5th, or except for the sobriety date. I think that one is important. So where'd you grow up?
Paoli, Indiana. I lived there all my life, born there, and went to school there. and actually lived there until I moved down here and got in recovery.
Oh, yeah? So all the way to, that's not so long ago.
Well, I was here, I had a relapse. I was down here in 2006 and stayed clean, sober for 5 years and relapsed in 2010.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I've been down here off and on since 2006.
Yeah. Well, I heard you talking about somebody a few minutes ago, and I don't want to drag him into this big time, but I heard you, the thing that caught my ear was that she keeps coming back. And I'm a product that keep coming back too, and that sounds like that's, I had to keep trying in order to get what I have today. And finally, one day, they say keep coming back till the miracle happens, right?
Yes.
And that is the truth.
Yes, I don't care how many times people come back through the program, as long as they keep coming back, and that we love them with open arms, because they need that, and
Absolutely.
Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly.
Yep. Yeah. I never give up on anybody. And like I said, I frequently say I'm a product of keep coming back. Give me a little bit of information about how you grew up. What was the circumstances? Anything you think might be pertinent. One of the things that I have found is as people sit across the table from me and tell their stories. For me, I knew I had this. Now looking back in the rearview mirror, I knew I had this disease before I ever took a drink. I knew that I was irritable, discontent as a child, and that I just couldn't fit in, and I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. So usually there's some story back there that I think that's really important, because as the book tells us, the alcohol is just a symptom of it. We have an underlying malady that began for me when I was a child. So I always try to hit on a little of that too while we're here at the microphone.
Yes, I believe that alcoholism and drug addiction in general is a family disease.
Yeah.
So in my family, both of my grandfathers was alcoholics, and my dad was an alcoholic, and I have a brother that's an alcoholic. And I know today that I've been, an alcoholic addict my whole life, because anything I do is always excessive. Whether it's eating or anything, it's there's never a stopping point for me.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. There is a piece of me that I've just changed my drug of choice. I've stopped using, I've stopped using booze. I've stopped using drugs. I now am off of nicotine. I'm proud to say for almost actually I know that number 621 days. I count that every day.
Wow!
Congratulations! Thank you. And actually the podcast that I released today was of a nicotine quitting buddy, because I went through the same kind of thing in a community effort to quit nicotine too, and I bonded with a bunch of people doing that I'm still in contact with that many days ago. So I had him on the show, and we did a little, and he lives in Virginia, so we did it remotely. But so what I've done, though, back to circle around, is I've really just changed my drugs of choice almost.
Mm-hmm.
One of my drugs of choice today that I giggle about is busyness. I'm overly busy, and I do a lot, so that I don't. I'm not. That's not lost on me. It can be a good thing, right? I mean, being busy and being productive is a good thing, but I can also bury myself in my work so that I don't have to think much and don't have to feel things. And I certainly am a sugar addict. I cannot get enough ice cream in this heat that we've been having lately.
Well, I feel that service work is an essential part of staying clean and sober today, and
it's not an option.
Yes, like you, I busy myself. I stay really, really busy, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, me either. But I do watch myself because of how I can get to an unhealthy level. I can wear myself to exhaustion, and I can overdo it. I can get to doing that in an excessive state also. So I have to keep my eye on old Dan, to making sure, and then also more importantly, have other people keeping their eye on Dan, because I can't see me that well, but my sponsor and my support group can say, hey buddy, you might want to back it off and take a day off once in a while, brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I can relate to that, because I'm on the advisory board for the Grace House, and then I'm also working with Dr. Yoder out of Paoli on opening up a recovery home for women that's pregnant. And then I just got elected on the board for Constructing Our Future, which is a big outfit out of Indianapolis that's rehabilitating women in prisons and teaching them building trades. And then they're renovating homes, and they're going to buy the homes. So we're kind of like in the early stages of getting that together. So,
man, that is fantastic stuff.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to tell you, if you will, and I probably shouldn't burn our airtime with that, but if I can get information on it, I'd be more than happy to put some stuff in the notes and stuff if there's anything where people will maybe able to go to be able to help.
Great.
And that kind of thing, we can put it, because there's like a show notes area underneath the podcast where I can actually document that. People don't have to remember what you just said and try to get that down. So we'll do that after the show, and you can text me something or give me some information so that I can make sure and get it distributed. Same thing for the Breakaway House too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So in Paoli, you know, I have a place out in between English and Paoli, and fairly, I ran Southern Indiana all my life. Paoli was a place I was at a bit, whether it was to be skiing or I was up in that neighborhood at Patoka, or you know, just different things. Hoosier National Forest popping down through there. How'd you grow up? I mean, could you give just a little insight into how your upbringing was when you were a kid?
Well, like I said, I grew up with my father being an alcoholic. He was a good dad, but then I couldn't see that he had the disease of addiction. And I thought it was normal. Back when I'm older, I'm 53 years old. So back when I was a kid, it was like the men would be at the VFW and the wife of the kids would be sitting in the parking lot. So I remember playing in the parking lot of the VFW with other kids my age. And, you know, I played sports in school and I was real athletic. And, you know, when I was probably 14 or so, what we did was go buy like cases of Pony Millers. You remember the Pony Millers?
Yeah.
And we thought we was doing big stuff, and we would go to the drive-in. It was back when drive-ins was open, and get drunk, and that's what we did. We would take our allowance and buy beer and go party, and you know, smoke weed. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah, no, we have no boundaries here. The truth is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So you started about 14. So it's
Yes.
best of your knowledge. Yeah, that's
Yes.
about the time I began that activity too. It was very similar.
And then it escalated into I got married when I was 18, and then you know it was nothing uncommon to have a keg of Pony or Little Kings, and we would go out on Patoka Lake because I was raised on Patoka Lake.
Yep.
And we would drink every weekend and party, and I never had any legal consequences, so I really thought that was normal stuff.
Everybody was doing it.
Yeah. Me and my husband started riding Harleys, and then we got involved with some people from Crawford County, and that's when I got introduced to the harder drugs. Is it okay to say?
Yeah, it's okay. We have no. I'll try to keep people's last names out of here. I try to keep that 2-letter organization out here for the anonymity principles, and that's really the only rules. We can cuss. We can mention any kind of substance that needs to be mentioned. This will get an explicit label on it. Most of my guys cuss like crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's when I was introduced to methamphetamine when I was 19.
Wow.
Probably, and cocaine, and all my life I was scared of needles, and to go to the doctor and get a shot, I was just terrified. And it was peer pressure, really. My friends was doing it, and we was in, like I said, once again, Crawford County. And I always say Crawford County. I don't know why. I guess
it's kind of funny. I see a little twinge about like those Crawford Countyans.
Yeah. Well, my mom was born and raised in Crawford County too. So, and we thought we was cool. We was riding Harleys, and they was doing IV drug use, and I wanted to try it too. And once I tried it, my husband, we would party on weekends, and Sunday night he would cut it off. I couldn't cut it off. And once I picked up the IV drugs, the needle, it was like that's all I wanted to do. And then I would on Sunday nights I had to have more. I had to have more because I had been up all weekend, so I had to have more to get through the week at work. And then it just escalated, and there was no shutting off. And I would like to sit here and tell you that over the years that I just decided to quit doing hard drugs, and I quit, but that's not what happened. What happened was back in late 80s, early 90s, you couldn't get drugs like you can today. So basically I had no connections, and then everything chilled out. But then once again, I went back to drinking and smoking weed. But to me, that was no big deal. That was normal. And so I was like a dry drunk for a while. Then I had a daughter, which was born in 1990. Everything was fine. Us alcoholics and addicts are really good people, and when we pick up that drink or drug, we lose our choice. And because up until the time that I picked the drugs up again, I was coaching my daughter in softball, basketball, and it was around the time she was in third grade, and I kind of lose track of time as far as the years go too.
Yeah.
Is when I started getting back into methamphetamine and crack cocaine, and I took a job up north. I worked in a furniture factory, and I was in the engineering department. So I had a really good job. I made really good money, and basically, to be honest with you, I was strung out on the dope, and my boss had enabled me, and I dropped an A-ball at work. And I mean, the other bosses was ready to fire me. I was falling asleep in my car outside, and one of the owners of the company, he kept enabling me, and he was like, well, you can't, it's not hers, because I was like, it's not mine. Well, anyway, make a long story short.
So when you said you dropped it, you physically dropped it.
I physically dropped it, and somebody found it, and it was in the engineering department, and it was pretty obvious whose it was.
Okay.
But one of the owners was like, we're going to fire her, and the other owner was like, no, it couldn't have been Lisa's. Well, it was. And so I left that job, and I went up north to Goshen, Indiana. We had lost a contract through Hillrom, which makes hospital furniture.
Uh-huh.
So they had got the contract for this piece of furniture that I'd helped engineer. So I went up there to train Wheeling Furniture on how to, make this piece of furniture. Make a long story short, I was living up in Goshen, driving back to Louisville and buying drugs, strung out, pretty much just left my husband and my daughter, and would row back in home, every couple weeks or whatever, and sleep, and trying to do the best I can to be that parent and to hold on to that home life. But I was, I didn't want my husband, but I didn't want nobody else to have him.
Yeah.
I was very selfish and self-centered. I ended up was falling asleep training these people on this furniture, and I was embarrassed, and so I just kind of just left and come back home. And finally, my mother was like, she needs help, and my husband was like, she can quit. She does not need help. And my mom was like, yes, she does, because she understood addiction, and he didn't. And I ended up going, I've got a lot of history, but basically the truth is I've been in and out of 6 different rehab facilities, from Ferdinand, Indiana, back when they used to have one there, Suburban Hospital in Louisville, Bloomington Hospital, Stepping Stones a couple times in Evansville. I've been to Turning Point. I think I've been in and out of rehab 6 times.
Wow. Yeah, and that just goes to that same thing of that inability. There's two cornerstones, if you might say. I think it's not probably the right term, but of addiction and alcoholism is you tried to quit and couldn't. That's a lot of history right there of trying to quit and actually getting a lot of help with facilities and stuff trying to quit. And that's not just sitting at home saying I'm gonna quit.
Yeah.
And can't, right? And then obviously the other one is we always talk about is once you start using, and you've talked about that, you can't control how much I'm going to use once I do. Yeah, if you've been in that many rehab places, you can't really hide behind I don't have a problem.
Well, and part of it was too is I would always think I could do it on my own. So when I would go and sleep it off, and then I was like, I can do this on my own, I would catch bits and pieces of the program, and I, still today that I've retained them, but I just never would stay because I always thought I could do it on my own. I'm better now, come and get me. And that's the truth. The only time I completed a rehab facility was under a court order. And for me, I'm the worst of the worst. And when I say that is because anybody that thinks they're beat down so bad that there's no help for them, I'm going to sit here and tell you right now that I was you and you was me. I'm one of them ones that you have to lock me up, put me away. I cannot walk up into a facility like some of these women that come in here and do it. And my hat's off to them. I am so proud of them because I was never able to do that. I have to be locked up in a jail cell in order to get me total absence from a substance.
That's powerful. That's a big testimony right there. That is powerful.
And that's what happened. In 2004, I was arrested for, I was just running in and out of my husband's life. And then in 2004, I was arrested for possession of meth. And I'd never been in trouble before. So this was one of my last rehab stints. They sent me to Stepping Stone in Evansville. I come home, bonded out, was clean for 3 months, and did the same thing that I did prior. I could do this on my own. I don't need them people. I've got this. And it wasn't 3 months and I was making connections at AA meetings and us going out and getting high instead of going to the meetings, or pretending I'm going to sleep on the couch and my husband not know it, and he knew what was going on. And trying to be the best mother that I could through this, but it wasn't long before I was gone again. And my family would tell you that they knew when I relapsed because I would disappear.
Oh.
I spent a lot of time alone because I never partied with people. I don't know if it was I was embarrassed of where I was in my addiction. I would drive and spend a lot of time alone.
Yeah, we talked about that to somebody else the other day of how crazy that was. That was a good place to isolate, and you kept moving. That's when I stopped is when I get caught, right?
Yeah.
But if I kept moving until I crashed something or but for the most part, if I kept moving, I kept mobile, and I could stay isolated too. A car was a great place to go party.
Yeah. I don't know if it was so much that for me as it was the fact of not wanting anybody to know what I was doing.
As I mean, you're hiding. You're isolated.
Yeah.
It's a perfect place to isolate. You isolate on the move.
Yeah. And as far as the legal consequences, I was out on bond, and this was in 2004, and it came up in 2005 that I had a pretrial conference in April. I was so high. And in the meantime, all this going on, my husband tried to take full custody of my daughter, which he needed to. And, I look back on it, and I put my mother in some bad situations because she knew I was strung out, and he wanted her to testify against me, and she couldn't do it. And I think back on that now because, look what I did to my mother, because this was all back before 2002, because my mom died in a car wreck when I was in active addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And then once she died in a car wreck, I used that as an excuse to continue on drinking and drugging, and
Right.
who cares?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about my daughter. I was thinking it was all about me and what I wanted to do. And the truth is, it wasn't even about that. It was about I wanted to get high, and family was getting in my way.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. I remember my sister opening up the door on me at Thanksgiving, and here I'd be in there shooting dope, and luckily she didn't see it, but I know it. I know what happened. So back to 2005 is I was out on bond, and the police, dropped my daughter off to work at a pizza place in Paoli, and I was going to run to Louisville and get some more drugs. And at this time, I was addicted to crack cocaine, but I was using the meth when I couldn't stay up any longer, and then selling the meth to buy more cocaine. And the police, I was speeding, and they turned around on me, so I wouldn't recommend this to anybody else, but I tried to outrun the cops.
Yeah.
So I got rid of the dope and took out this dirt road and went down through the hill and in the woods and hung up this four-wheel drive, and the state cop car was hung up, and they had to get the rollbacks in here to get both of our cars out. And I'm like jumping out of the car, and I'm running up the hill, and I only get from probably 100 yards, and I'm like, shoo, I can't do this. And then I thought I was really cool because I was so arrogant back then and so full of self, and I was like, I don't know who was driving that truck, but it wasn't me. Well, the guy
just happened to be out here in the woods.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. So, and Judge Blanton was a judge in Paoli at that time, and he was so good to me, and he did to me exactly what he should do, and I love that man to this day. So this time, he puts me in jail, and I've got fleeing and all these charges, driving charges, resisting law enforcement, and I've got this pending possession of meth and possession of cocaine, too, back from 2004. And that judge sends me back to rehab. This time I go to Turning Point here in Jeffersonville. And I knew my ass was on fire, excuse me, but my ass was on fire.
Yeah.
I was in trouble. And so I thought, okay, what about these halfway houses? I don't even know what they are. I had no idea, because Paoli is so shut off in such of a little county. They're just now starting to get a little bit of recovery up there and doing meetings. So I went and toured the Bliss House. And I was like, all right, I've got a plan now. I'm going to go to this Bliss House, and I've got to do something because I am in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Well, Judge Blanton had a good sense of humor, because I was there for 45 days. I stayed as long as I could at my insurance because I was furloughed from jail.
At the Turning Point, at the rehab place, you stayed.
Yes,
as long as
furloughed
you could.
from jail. I think I got arrested in April for all these driving charges, and this was May that I was at Turning Point. And so now I was going back up to the judge, and I was like, I'm going to go to this halfway house. And he's like, do you? You really want to go to this halfway house? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He was like, I get excited when I talk about it. He was
I love it.
You can go to the halfway house. You're going to prison. 6 years, suspend 2, foredo 2, and upon release, you're going to that halfway house on a Class A misdemeanor resisting law enforcement.
You're going to a halfway house, and here's how you're going.
Yes, so that was funny because that's exactly what needed to happen to me. Well, with the days that I had served between the time, I ended up going to prison for 1 year. Okay, I went to Rockville, went through intake, and went to Madison, which is like camp, women's prison. So when I got out of the women's prison, I was furloughed to the Bliss House for 1 year. And I was like, wow. So I went to the Bliss House, and I did really good, and I was better than I'd ever been. And this was in 2006. Well, I laugh about this too, because once again, Lisa wants to do what Lisa wants to do. Self-centered, all about me. Okay, and I thought, well, I'm not staying there a year. So I hire a lawyer. And Miss Sue at the time, I'm sure you know Miss Sue, was the director. And about 8 months into it, I hired a lawyer, and I was going to petition the courts to get out of this halfway house because she wasn't graduating me when I thought she should. So I spent my $500, and I hired an attorney, and we went up to Paoli. And Miss Sue graduated me before my court date. So I go to Paoli, and Judge Blanton suspends the 2 years of probation and completely sets me free. Completely sets me free. I was better than I ever had, but I got to tell you that when I went into recovery in 2006, I looked for the easier and softer way. I got me a sponsor that wasn't going to make me work. I didn't need your all's meetings because I was better than I have ever been. I had a good job. I was driving a truck for paper products, and everything was going good, and I was just in such good shape, and I was like, what do I need meetings for? So I went to minimum meetings. I did a sponsor that wouldn't make me work. And then Friday night when everybody go out and eat, I didn't want to go out and hang out with you all. I wanted to go get my house up in Paoli together and get my land and everything straight, and was going up there and spending time with my dad. So this went on, and I didn't need to do service work. I didn't need none of it. I didn't need anything you all had. So basically what I did was I did everything wrong, because for me, I've got to learn the hard way in anything I do. So come 2009, I knew I had Hep C. I found out when I went to prison. So in 2009, I'd been sober 4 years, I think, something like that. And 4 years. And I went through the Hep C treatment. Well, back then it was the interferon, so it was a year-long treatment, injections in your stomach and all that. I had textbook recovery. I wasn't sick. I didn't miss a day of work. I didn't feel good. I was tired. I was pale, but I worked every day. I mean, I did really good through that treatment. That was January 2009 I started it. In the meantime, I moved away. All this time from 2006 till 2009, I worked at the Bliss House, and I stayed at the Bliss House. I didn't leave that property. But I didn't do service work. I did work there as a night manager, but I didn't hang out with you all because, once again, I was better than I'd ever been. So I moved back to Palmyra, Indiana, with my girlfriend. This was in probably... I started the treatment in January of 2009, so it was like April. Well, I moved away, so I didn't go to no meetings, didn't call no sponsor. My dad died. He had a heart attack, and he died in June of 2009. Well, I was tired, and they was offering me pain pills, and I was never addicted to pain pills.
I didn't have a problem with pain pills.
I didn't have a problem with pain pills. So I started taking pain pills, and it gave me energy.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So
just as a little side, my dad lives with me, and he will have an opportunity now and again when he gets some pain pills. Now I got to be really careful with that, but he will lay on that couch for 8 hours at a time after taking a 5 milligram pain pill, and when I put some pain pills in me, I'm cleaning house, I'm raking the leaves, I'm doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
He's comatose.
well, he needs it and you don't.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I was taking the pain pills and still not going to meetings. Everything was going fine through the Hep C treatment. In January of 2010, since I wasn't never an alcoholic, I never had a problem with drinking, so I picked a drink up. Come June of 2010, I never went back to see if I was Hep C free. I knew that I finished the treatment, but you have to keep a 0 viral count for 6 months to know if you're in remission or not. I never went back because June I was in Patoka Lake on a boat trip for a company, Howard Packing in Corden, Indiana. Drunk, stopped back at DePaul, Indiana, or over New Salisbury area. Ramsey.
Yeah, I know all those places.
Yes, Ramsey at a friend's house, and he had methamphetamine. Well, that really wasn't my problem either. It was the crack that,
Isn't that interesting?
Yes. So I picked that up, and then my daughter told my girlfriend, she was like, do you have any idea you just unleashed the devil? Because I was off and running. There was no stopping me. I couldn't stop for nobody. Nothing mattered. I was gone. And as this was in 2010, June, I ended up delivering cigarettes for a company called Axton in Louisville, Kentucky. In early 2012, I couldn't afford my habit anymore. So when you come to that point, you're either going to have to deal the drugs or manufacture the drugs or sell your body. Okay. And I started manufacturing methamphetamine, and that became a whole new addiction.
Yeah, and that's a whole, that's the only thing you can really make yourself. I mean, I guess you can make booze, but you can't. I don't think you can really make cocaine, or at least not.
No,
that
it
you
was
can
like
make meth.
unlimited supply of everything. So from once again, my sobriety date was August the 6th, of 2013. So from 2012, for 1 year, I manufactured and I had unlimited supplies. I was putting so much drugs in my body because I was manufacturing. I had it. Then I was addicted to making it. So I was driving to Louisville, delivering cigarettes, staying up all night, manufacturing, coming to Louisville, buying crack cocaine, taking pain pills. I had a prescription for Xanaxes because I used that as an excuse from the Hep C treatment. So I had 120 Lortabs coming in, 90 Xanaxes coming in. I was manufacturing methamphetamine. I was smoking crack, and I was strung out.
Yeah.
And I lost my job. I got fired because...
I can't imagine.
Well, I bumped a car in Simpsonville because I passed out, stuck in traffic. And when I hit the car in front of me, my boss fired me, and it broke my heart. I'd never been fired. I tried so hard to be the best that I could be.
Yeah, now my heart's broken.
Yes, my heart's broken because I got fired. I couldn't believe it. But what I do know is that, thank God, I didn't kill someone.
Yeah.
It's kids, family, or kill myself, because I remember I would just grab the steering wheel and was like, please God, help me. Please God, help me, because I knew I was going down. I just didn't know how it was going to happen. Falling asleep at the wheel driving. So that was a blessing. I was in and out of the hospital for like the last 6 months before August when I got sober. And what I know today is my body was shutting down. And I was to the point to where I couldn't even get high because I was so sick. I couldn't even get up and use the bathroom because I was so sick. I laid out there, and I was in and out of Orange County Hospital. And I don't think that I would have lived much longer with all the chemicals and stuff I was putting in my body. So there was a guy, we got all these people hanging out when we're doing what we're doing. And
that's a pretty typical cliche slide. There was a guy.
Mm-hmm. And he got busted, and he told him I sold him methamphetamine and I was manufacturing the night before. And so when I got home, I just happened to come home in August, and when I pulled my driveway, the Indiana State Police Detective Paul Andry and several state police officers was all there, and they come at me with guns, and I just got out of the truck and surrendered. And I had everything you could imagine. I had just come back from Louisville. I had all the precursors to make a batch. I had 12 little baggies of methamphetamine. I had less than 8-ball cocaine. I had the Lortabs and Xanaxes, and so they slapped 2A felonies on me, dealing with intent to manufacture, dealing methamphetamine, 2As, several Cs. I had 6 felony charges.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, when you got all that on you, they probably just...
Yes. I had actually 3.34 grams of meth and 2.75 of cocaine. But it was in different bags. I surrendered. I cried like a baby. I was like, I'm so glad it's over. And Paul Andry, the state cop, we smoked cigarettes together in the yard, and I told him everything. And he took me to jail, and it was kind of like a relief. It was over.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then Judge Blanton is still the judge. This is so many years later, from 2006 to 2013.
Yeah.
He sent me back to Stepping Stone. No, is that right? Let me think about this for a minute. No, he didn't. This time he didn't. I sat in jail for 4 months, and I kept trying to get a bond, and I had a $125,000 cash only bond on me. And I asked, and I went up there to court one day, and when you look back over your life, you see how God's working in your life.
Right.
And I'll get to the really big part here in a little while, but I remember going up there that day, and I just knew that I needed to be down here with my people. I needed to be down here with my AA crowd, my recovery crowd, my family. I need to be with my sisters at the Bliss House. That's where I needed to be because I was so sick.
Yeah.
And I remember in court, and it was like my 3rd bond reduction, and I asked my attorney if I could say something, and he said yes. And I said, Mr. Judge Blanton, will you please allow me the opportunity to get free on the inside? And when I come back here, I'll be okay with no matter what you do. Because I was so full of guilt, shame, and remorse, and I was so sick spiritually that I needed to come down here and get free to where I could have acceptance in whatever my future was going to be. And I remember he dropped his head and he looked up at me and he said, Livingston, I'm going out on a limb for you, and you better not saw it off. That's how he was. He was an old country judge. And he let me bond out on $75,000 bond and quartered me to the Bliss House. And I went down there, and I was like, I want everything you all have. I want the best sponsor. I want to do everything I can. I want to jump in Hope Mott, my best friend that's got 10 years sobriety. I'm going to follow her because I want what she has. And that's what I did. Janice B. is the director of the Breakaway now, and she was my sponsor. And I was attracted to her spirituality. I was attracted to her program. I was attracted to her knowledge. And I asked her to be my sponsor, and she took me through the steps. Went out to eat. No matter if I didn't even want to go, I went out to eat every Friday night with the crowd, the recovery crowd. I went to all the functions. I did everything because I was so scared for my life. And it wasn't about going to prison at this point, because the whole time I have these charges hanging over my head.
Right.
It was about living today. And that's when I met you, was right around in that time. Which I was doing the meditation, everything.
Yeah. That was the going to any lengths is what I'm hearing.
Yes. So in the meantime, I'm at the Bliss House, and I'm going through my step work and, the Lord's Prayer. We always do the Lord's Prayer in meetings and everything. And I noticed that I started getting the goosebumps during the Lord's Prayer. And I was like, because I never went to church when I was younger, so I knew God was out there, but I didn't have any kind of relationship with him. And when I started getting these goosebumps, I was like, all right, there's something going on here. It is not code every time we do the Lord's Prayer.
You're talking about that, and that's happening to me.
Is it? Wow, that's big. The spirits are right here right now. So then I got to where I'd close my eyes, and I'd hold her hands tight beside me, and I'd close my eyes. And then I got to where, and I was telling Janice about this, and she was like, well, I'm jealous because I can't do that. I could will the spirit to move in my body. I would sit there and hold hands real tight, and I could close my eyes, and I could put myself all in God's will, and I could make the spirit move in my body. And when that happened the first time, I just went plumb, like, it was, you're talking about a pink elephant. I can't even, words don't describe he was real. God is real. The whole time he's been right here in my heart, and it was up to me to make that conscious contact with him. I'm not special. We all have it.
Yep.
We just have to find it and make that conscious contact with him. And when I figured out that was really what was going on and he was real and all that, I mean, I was on fire.
Remove the blocks.
Yes. So then I was on fire, and I was like, God is real. He's real. I mean, so, my prayer game got really good because now I know that I'm not just talking to anything.
I get that completely.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I had a good friend. Her name was Nicole Snelling. She died February the 21st of 2016. She was my Bliss House alumni sister. She lived next door. She monitored at the Bliss House when I was there in 2013. She had relapsed, and she didn't die from a drug overdose, but she died from of infection from the injection site.
Yeah.
And I was there at the hospital. She actually died from the aneurysm. She was in the hospital, and she had this infection, and she was in ICU. They took her out of ICU and put her in a regular room. Well, 2 days later, she grabbed her head and was like, "Oh, my head," and she died. She was brain dead. I had just been there and seen her the day before and asked her, "Are you coming back to us?" And she's like, "Yeah, I just want to be with my family and kids, and we'll get back in recovery." And then she died. They donated her organs, and her mom, it hit us hard.
Yeah, I remember.
Really hard. It was in the early stages of the heroin epidemic, and it was the first one close to me that passed. So in the meantime, I'd started this construction company in 2014, Lisa's Roofing and Construction, and the News and Tribune had done an article on homelessness, and they ran an article and job shadowed me. Well, work just come pouring in. And I was like, these people want to hire a drug addict like me and let me in their homes. I was from that little county to where my self-esteem had diminished to nothing. And I come down here to where I was building my recovery life. And I was like so overwhelmed with gratitude that people was actually giving me a chance and knowing I was a drug addict.
Yeah.
And my sister was like, "Why do you tell people that?" And I said, "Because I want people to know who I am. And it's what I was is not who I am today."
Right. Exactly.
So my business, and it excelled, and I would pack my little lunchbox, and I wouldn't go, I'm like a big budgeter. So I don't go and give my money to convenience stores, and I pack my lunch, and I save my money. And this was around the time Nicole died, which guess my business had been open a couple years. And when Nicole died, there was like a 50 people waiting list at the Bliss House. People was dying from heroin overdoses. Yeah. And I was like, what can I do through prayer? How God works in my life is I can come up with a million plans. But I'll know within a day or two if it's Lisa's will or God's will, because if it's Lisa's will, I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
If it's God's will, then I know this is what I've got to do because God's backing me through prayer. Through praying, when I pray about this and I'm dead set, and I'll know in the morning. It may be the next day or maybe a few days later, but I know when it's God's will, and if it's God's will, I'm on fire to do it. And I'd been praying about a recovery home because there wasn't anything hardly in southern Indiana for women.
Yeah. One game in town, really, Bliss House, right? I mean, that was
the Bliss House in St. Elizabeth, or Butterfly House in Elizabeth, Indiana.
Okay.
Yes. And so I got up one morning, and it's funny because Janice was my sponsor, and when she took me through the steps, I was like, I'm opening a halfway house, which we all are when we get sober. I don't know about you, but we all are. And you're going to be the director. And she was like, she's full of shit, because this was back in 2014. So in 2016, through prayer, I was like, all right, I'm going to, God said do it. And I went and thought, okay, I'm going to go use my whole savings, and I'm opening up a halfway house. I'm going to rent a house. I'm going to put the women in there. And Janice, you're going to be the director. And Janice like, okay. So I called my mentors, which was Sue LaRue, which was the retired director from the Bliss House, Sandy McCauley, She is an accountant. Her husband's a big accountant here in Jeffersonville, retired now, but she was on the board of directors for the Center for Lay Ministry. So I just utilized the resources that I had met through recovery. And so they was like calling, and these ladies are 72 and 3 years old, and they're my best friends, and I love hanging out with them. And they're like, we got to do something. Lisa's about to lose all of her money. So they're like, all right, we're on board. And I was going to rent a house off of Kevin. And the zoning board shut me down. And I didn't pick New Albany, Indiana. New Albany picked us.
Yeah.
Because God has opened doors for this house from day one.
I was going to say that God's will thing too is that, when I know when things start happening, it's beyond me, that it's not me when things start doors open and I'm in a flow state. That's when I know the difference. If I'm pushing and fighting,
Yeah.
like usually going, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. When I start sliding down that path where I know it's all happening,
Yeah.
then I'm going, okay, now I'm in alignment.
I had to run to keep up with God's blessings.
Right.
I mean, I'm not kidding you a bit. I look back on it today and I'm like, wow, what a ride with everything.
Yeah.
And the whole time I've got these charges hanging over my head, and I'm like, okay, I've got to prepare if I go to prison. So I've got to make sure that I get a good, strong board. I've got to make sure that I knew nothing, but I had my mentors helping me, and I knew that Janice can handle the house. So, and then my niece, which is one of my alumni sisters, Casey Schaefer, I was like, okay, I'm going to train you in as executive director for this house and cover all my bases in case I'm removed. Make a long story short, we found a house. The zoning denied us. We was in a residential. Through word of mouth, the house that we have now here on 1514 East Spring Street in New Albany, Indiana, had been empty for 3 years, and it was in foreclosure. So we found this house. In the meantime, the media gets involved because of the zoning being shut down and people hearing that I'm trying to, do something in the community. So Paget Incorporated, one of the local business owners here in New Albany, contacted me and asked me to come down and talk to him. In the meantime, I hadn't even found this house. I'm trying to, somewhere in there. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked.
That's okay.
But
the timelines don't really work out that well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter that often much either.
So I went down there and he interviewed me, and I didn't really know. This whole business stuff is new to me, other than doing the construction stuff. And he asked me a lot of questions and what I wanted to do, and I told him what I was wanting to do, I told him about this house that was empty and it was in foreclosure, and he listened to me and we talked for a while, and then about 2 weeks later he calls me and he said, "Won't you come back down here?" And when I went back down there, he put me in a conference room, and the secretary said, "Go to the conference room, and there's a paper there. Read that paper. Mr. Paget will be down in a minute." And I went in there, and the paper was a contract buy. He was going to buy this house for the Breakaway, which is the name of the recovery home. And in the beginning, we wanted to call it Nicole's Place after Nicole, but there was a conflict of interest with the business in Louisville, so we went with the Breakaway in remembrance of Nicole. And so tears just started flowing.
Yeah.
I mean, who does this for a drug addict like me that will help out and put the money out there to purchase this home?
Right.
So the contract was that he was going to reimburse us so much, and it was a really sweet deal. I was just blown away, and so in the meantime, we get the home. We need sprinkler systems put in here, and my savings was just $10,000. It wasn't a lot, That's what the sprinkler systems cost. Well, he paid for everything and just added it on our mortgage. So he basically, if it wasn't for Paget Incorporated, not just him, his sisters, it's a company, family-owned business, we would not be where we're at today.
Right.
Now, with that being said, so when we got the home, this home has been built by the community. This is not my home. This is God's home.
Right.
And it's been built this is a community-owned home. It's a not-for-profit. And if it wasn't for everybody that donated, this young lady right here, Samantha, that's here with us, she donates her time here. From the people that's donated the flooring, from the people that's done the electrical work, from anybody that's donated furniture, everything in this house has been donated. There's everything. So this is, once again, and I stress this is a community's house because I could have never done this alone.
Right.
Together we could do what I could not do alone. So we just jump in here, and Janice is the director, and I'm executive director, and we got volunteers coming in, and we bring in our first 6 women October of 2017.
Yeah.
We officially opened the doors.
I remember just to break in once, I came down for something, and I can't remember, we were donating something or something. I think y'all were having a yard sale or something. And the place was really pretty rough. But I saw, well, you took me through, and you gave me like the dream. You know, you said, this is going to be this is going to be that, you know, but I couldn't, you know, I really had some faith in you because there was something, I could see that momentum, right? And that same kind of thing was happening in my life at some level. And I'm like, that's all going to come to fruition. You know, that is actually going to happen. But you took me through, I felt really honored that day that you took me through, you know, and you had the dream, and you said, these are where the girls, we're going to have rooms in here, we're going to be doing this, we're going to do that. And I thought it was just really cool. I'll never forget it.
Well, I know that one of the things Mr. Paget told me is that he admired my passion.
Yeah.
And that it's not, because I was like, you know, I'm not a college educated person. I'm just a little old me. And he said, you know, people with passion go further sometimes. He's not, you know, downgrading education. We're not doing that.
Right.
But he said that was one of the reasons. Well, in the meantime, I've got these charges. So all this is going on. And I'm like, okay, before Mr. Paget puts this money up, I've got to go tell him who I am. I got to go tell him if he's putting his trust in me that I'm about to be sent off to prison, maybe there's a chance that I can. So I went down there and asked to meet with him, and I said, I told him. And he was like, I know exactly who you are, Lisa Dawn Livingston. He'd already Googled my name, knew everything about me, and went ahead and went with it. And I was like, wow.
Okay.
And, you know, none of us knew, a lot of us didn't know what we was doing. We just, you know, did the best we can. And Janice is amazing. She's the one that does the programs. We do Recovery Dynamics. And so the house is doing real good. And the whole time, well, in the meantime, in Orange County, there's a new judge that's elected, and he was a prosecutor prior. Excuse me. So he started his term in 2000, I guess 16 or 17, same time as Trump. So I pled guilty to the charges because there was nothing I could do to beat him because I told on myself. I told on myself because I surrendered my will that day when I got the charges, and so we did a blind plea. And March the 12th of 2018, I went up for sentencing. There was 550 letters wrote to the courts. There was over 100 people at my sentencing. I had volunteered for community corrections and put myself in there the year before for accountability, drug test, and everything. That Indiana State police officer that arrested me, he testified on my behalf.
Yeah.
He put his 30-year career that I wouldn't reoffend, and he's a big part of the breakaway. He supports the breakaway, and he's never done that before.
Wow.
Like I said, he testified. Community Corrections come down and testified that I was a model citizen or whatever. I was a good community corrections person. Janine.
You was being a good girl.
I was being a good girl.
Janine's an angel to me. She's a big piece in my story that I talk about her often.
Yeah. And so we went up there, and the judge said it's not a public poll whether I go to prison or not, and that I should have worked more on my criminal case than my resume. And
I remember reading that in the paper.
Sentenced me.
Popularity contest or something term was talked about too. Not a popularity contest.
Yeah.
I remember.
And he said that I should, and he sentenced me to 30 years in prison.
Yeah.
My out date was 2032, November of 2032. I was in shock.
It shocked the whole community.
Yeah.
And the whole recovery community specifically. Everybody was really. I'm tearing up and getting touched to talk about it. Yeah, shock. I can't imagine what you felt.
You know, I was in shock, but I was also, all I could think about was Nicole. I'm not dead. I get to spend my time in prison. I get to live today. And, sometimes I felt like, man, that's sad that I got to be just thankful I'm alive. And then I thought, there's people out there dying of cancer. There's people out there that's dying from heroin overdoses. I don't ever want to live like that again. I'm alive and I'm healthy and I'm safe. But I hurt for my family. It was hard on my daughter. It was hard on my family, because when people's incarcerated, the family's the one that suffer.
Right, yeah.
But I got the opportunity to make a lot of true friends. So I didn't have to do any of that time alone. I didn't have to go up there alone. I had a big bunch of friends on the outside that I built through recovery.
Right.
And that's what we got today. In our recovery group it means so much to me, because I couldn't do it without you all. And so I had all of you all, and I knew my worth today. I hated that the judge didn't know my heart, because I feel that he felt like that I did all this, and a rumor had spread. It had been said that I did all this to get I go into prison. But, no weapons formed against me shall prosper. And I firmly believe that, and I live today by to thy own self be true. I do it, and I can't, it's like, I'm just going to be real. I was going to write one of my friends up in prison, and I got the letter, and I wrote it and everything, and I signed Janice's name so that they wouldn't know it was me, and I got to the mailbox, and I was like, I can't do it. I've got to wait that year. Any little thing like that, I can't do it, because I'm too scared of the consequences of an action if I lie today.
So let me understand, just so I get back, you're not allowed to contact anybody?
Not for a year. Once
Okay.
you've been released from prison, you got to wait a year to
and you wanted
contact.
to, and you were getting ready to, and you were getting ready to do it deceitfully and couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. I can't today. I haven't been able to since I got sober and got a personal relationship with God. I mean, there's times, I was everything. A thief, a liar. I was all that in my active addiction.
Yeah.
And through recovery and my relationship with God, it's changed me. So anyway, I went to prison. I went to jail, and the next morning, the Indiana State Police officer come and got me out of my cell, and he cried like a baby. He said, "I'm so sorry." He said, I don't understand why they did what they did to you. They're supposed to be Christian men." And he said he was heartbroken. I was still in shock. I went to intake. I went through all the emotions. I found the acceptance finally. But I hurt for home, and I was homesick, and he gave me so much time. They put me in the Class 5 facility and being my time, and I was in there with a lot of murderers. I was in there because of my time. It put me as a high risk. I wasn't able to go to Madison prison because of the time he gave me. It made even though I was a nonviolent drug charge, it made me a Class 3. So I had to stay at Indiana Women's Prison, which is, with a lot of violent, which is okay. I'm not trying to take their inventory. And once again, I want to say women's prisons is not like men's prisons. It's not, you don't have to worry about getting raped and, really getting beat up. You could get beat up if you did stupid things. But it was actually, Rockville was hell, the women's prison there, but Indiana Women's Prison was really good to me. They treated you with respect, the guards did, and so I was okay.
Well, it certainly is interesting that, and I know that in your heart you don't feel that way, because even the people who are the murderers and stuff, I know they're still just as much of a divine creature as that's just the spiritual sickness that does that in my mind. That is a spirit that is hurting very bad. It's able to do those things, not unlike the spirit that I had. It was bad. It did the drugs and did the things that I did.
Yes.
But the fact that I do draw a bit of a distinction between the crimes and the fitting that I'm a drug dealer or maker, and then there is a difference in people who have done violent. That have a violent tendency, because I don't really see that. I don't know, and I don't. Maybe you were violent at some point, but I don't get the vibe that would have been in your heart even then.
No, it's like I said, I went up there and I had opinions and stuff, and I was up there there was people up there for murder that you could tell their spirits was evil, and there was people up there for felony murder, which the difference between felony murder versus murder, I didn't know until I got there, is, if me and you go out and commit a crime and somebody gets killed, even though I'm just with you, that's felony murder. So there's a lot of unjust when I really seen how the Indiana criminal system is so unjust when I went up there in that prison. Like, there's so many people serving so many long sentences that, like myself, there was people up there doing 40-year prison sentence on the same charges as me. So I had a lengthy sentence, but there's a lot of women up there that's worse off than me. So I start going to church, and I just completely, I spent 10:30 count on my knees. I put my shower slippers under my knees, and I don't care if the count lasted 2 hours, hour and a half, I wouldn't get up off my knees in prayer until that count was over, and I made that personal commitment every day.
Is that the inmate count? Is that what the count?
There's count times that you have to be on your bunk, and it was a 10:30 count, and I would just, every day, I'd put my slippers underneath my knees, and I would stay on my knees for sometimes 2 hours.
Wow.
I would start out with prayer, and then I would read my Bible, and then I would do my meditations, and I would just spend that whole time with God every day. And one of my biggest prayers is my daughter's in active addiction at this time, and that He protects her, and He's his child, and just on loan to me. So I prayed for God to remove the obsession to use drugs away from her. And then my other prayer was to, in the meantime, I'm in this appeals court, and I'm like, not please God get me out of prison. It was, let these judges make the right decision, because God, you know my heart. Because that was my biggest thing. God knows our heart. We can bullshit anybody and everybody we want. That's why it falls back onto the own self be true, because He knows your heart. When God knows your heart, good things is going to happen, and I knew that He knew my heart. So I prayed that He would open these judges, let these judges make the right decision, not get me out of jail. What is the right decision for me? Because I needed to be held accountable for my actions as well, and I understood that. So what is the right decision? But 30 years was not the right decision.
Yeah.
Okay, He gave me minimum sentence is what would have been the right decision. But stay with me now, because this is when it gets really spiritual. Because I'm getting this 30 years and the whole community's outraged. I'm completely in shock. So much going on. And I just realized this like a month ago, maybe found acceptance in it, is if I hadn't got sentenced at 30 years, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. If He would have gave me the minimum sentence, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I'd be up there in prison, because that's justifiable, and the Indiana Supreme Court wouldn't overturn my conviction. So God the whole time has been just like, set still, I've got this, and I couldn't see it. And we can't see what His plans are for our life.
Right.
He knew, and that's why I got the sentence I got. Do I think the judge sentenced me that knowing it? No. I don't think his motives was like that. But God knew. And God knew that whole time He's working to get me out. But I couldn't see it. Yeah. Nobody could see it. But I see it now.
Yeah.
So to make a long story short, I got denied October the 31st of last year from the appeals court. They sided with the judge, the sentencing judge. They basically, to be honest with you, they didn't even look through the case. They just pushed it through. Now, my girlfriend coming seen me December the 31st of 2018. And she got, the whole time I'm telling them, I'd already completely just decided after that appeals, I was like, this is where I'm going to be. The criminal justice system is going to side with the courts, basically, and there's going to be people lost in the system. And I just felt like there wasn't no hope anymore. I pretty much found acceptance. But I was telling my daughter, my girlfriend, my family, it won't be much longer, because I've got in purposeful incarceration. That purposeful incarceration means nothing. You can't get into programs. He gave me so much time I couldn't even get into it.
Oh, really?
So I was going to be pushed back. And people will say, oh, you got purposeful incarceration, you'll be out in a year. No, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with the time frame that I got. I wasn't even eligible for the programs probably until 2028.
Wow.
To get into them. So on October the 31st, which was New Year's Eve, my girlfriend got pulled over by the police in Austin coming back from visiting me, and she pulled it up on my case. And at 4:06, December the 31st of 2018, the Indiana Supreme Court overturned my conviction. And I was just like, oh my God, and I couldn't believe it. And we had to have people to make sure it was right. And 4 out of 5 Indiana Supreme Court judges voted to release me. And when I was just couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, if I was never indebted to God, I was then. And then I knew He had answered my prayers through letting them judges make the right decision. And when I seen that Indiana Supreme Court brief, they went through my case with a fine-tooth comb. They had through the sentencing, through the arrest, they had me having more drugs than what I had. They had called the Indiana State Police Lab. I mean, the Indiana Supreme Court dissected my case down to the very beginning.
Wow.
They had the wrong amount of drugs on there. The right amount was less than what I got charged with in the beginning. I had less than an 8-ball, which would have turned it into the 8 felony. So it was nor here nor there. I still had an informant. So, but I was so pleased that they actually did what people's supposed to do.
Right, yeah.
And so I was, January the 16th of 2019, I was released from prison.
Yeah. Actually, prior to this, I pulled up and I did a little research and was looking at newspaper articles and stuff through there, and ran across that particular day's announcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a miracle. It's really unreal. I mean, and I do a little teaser for this, but, the fact of the matter is, that when you do the work that you've done and you keep yourself in that position in your life and you're given this surrender, this true, real surrender, and I don't, we talk about that, we hear that in the rooms about, what's that mean, how do I do it? I like when I hear somebody, I just need to surrender. Like, I wish that I could, like, there's not a recipe for that, right? There really isn't. It's something that's happened somehow, and I don't know what it takes for different people to have that surrender. But once it does happen, and you're actually allowed to let this higher power God into your life and to work through you, and then you take the right actions, because that's the other thing is that I have to align myself to some extent with that work, right? Mm-hmm. The miracles that can happen when you do that, and yours is just like a biggest fireworks show ever kind of miracle. That happened.
Yeah, it's
real.
I'm on fire for recovery. I'll tell you, once I come back, I was in shock a little bit, and I was trying to take everything in. But I do know that it's made me a better person. I think things through today. I don't people please. There's times that I've had to stand my ground here to break away since I come back in, to where I just have to stand my ground. I've got to be the executive director, and and here's where it's at. Every decision made in this house is about them women sitting at that table. I know what it feels like to be a lady sitting at that table in early recovery. And I'd be damned if I'm going to let anything outcast anybody. I don't care if they relapse 15 times. They're still welcome to come back here if they want to get clean and sober.
Amen.
They have to be clean to come on property. But I'm welcoming them with open arms. I don't care how many times they fall down, because I'll tell you where I'm at with it today is I'd be darned if the last time I see somebody that I want them to think that Lisa Livingston turned them away.
Yeah.
And them die out there, because they're dying. It's no joke today.
You're exactly right. It is no joke.
And I take it very serious. And this is my life goal, is to continue to help addicts and alcoholics just like myself.
Yeah.
And the good news is, and I got to share this one last thing, is tomorrow we will be officially owners of the Breakaway Incorporated. We are buying our facility.
How's that for timing?
Yes.
That's
big
super
stuff.
Cool. I've had chills the entire interview, really. I really have. And I feel that, that's a thing that's real, like you said, and I don't doubt it. And I can't explain it to anybody else. When I talk to somebody that gets it, then they know, right? So you know that. But, I can talk to some people and they go, look at me like, yeah, Dan's lost his marbles a little bit. But, yeah, that is really, really cool. I'm so excited for all of it. There's been a thing, and it's this thing, and it sounds like it sounds a little disingenuous at times when you do this, when I say these things, but my life has been impacted greatly in the same way, and I feel like when you're talking about that, that's what I'm doing here. What I'm trying to do is carry these messages to other people so they can see that this can happen for them too.
Yes.
No matter how fucking far down you are, down in the hole, it is never too late for God to pull you back up out
That's
of
right.
that stuff. And these things that happen to us that look like the worst thing that could ever happen to me. 30 years. I was standing down there, and they were wanting to charge, my top end was 20.
Mm-hmm.
Were they probably going to give that? Probably not. Just like you said, they probably weren't going to give you the maximum either,
Yeah.
were they?
Well, my maximum was 40.
Yeah, was it? Okay. So I was sitting there doing that, and what looked like the worst thing could ever happen to me was that, they said 6 to 20 was bad enough for me, but that was enough to jerk a knot in my tail to where I ended up having that surrender happen where I said, okay, whatever, take me, and I try to walk that path, and I watched you do it too, and I knew that, I don't think it's an accident. I don't believe in accidents anymore.
Me neither.
And I don't believe it was an accident. Today we met at some level, and I don't know what that was, but you impacted me. There's a lot of people come in through that meeting,
Yeah.
but I remember you, and I remember that, and I've had my eyes on this the whole time because I've watched for whatever reason, whatever it is, God saying, hey, I think that happens. I think God taps you on the gold shoulder and goes, watch that. You just watch that. Because I have some other times going on too, and I get to have that same story today where I get to carry a message like this to somebody else. Mine and yours are not that all different. I didn't do, but there's parallels of where higher power, where God and the 12 steps have came in and taken something that was a wreck and completely resurrected it.
Yes.
And I can tell people and carry that as a truth to some other guy who is sitting there with charges on his tail end.
Yeah.
That he thinks he's too far down, that cannot be lifted. And say, no, here, let me tell you a couple stories.
Yes.
And that's what I want to do here, is have your story out there so that people can hear that.
Well, thank you. I know if you go back 12 years, say, the United States Supreme Court, they jumped on recovery versus incarceration. Okay? So you fast forward 12 years, not about me, but to my case. My lawyers are just jumping for joy because fast forward 12 years, Indiana is just now getting on board with the recovery versus incarceration. So with my case, the lawyers are using it all over Indiana in reference to get people from going to prison and getting them an option at recovery versus incarceration. I know in Washington County and Harrison County, I've already heard about 2 people they've used my case as case references. The one in Washington County, the guy got 4 years community corrections. He was so blessed because they went with the recovery versus incarceration for non-violent drug offenders. The one in Harrison County didn't work out so well, but I think there was a lot of stuff that went with that one. But it's given the lawyers something to work with today because before they was going in there and being completely shut down. So it's a big win for the state of Indiana. It really is.
Humanity.
Yes. It's not about
because we're sick. That's the fact of the matter.
Yes.
I'm getting thrown in jail because I'm sick.
Yeah.
And that's not going to get me better. There's other ways to do that. Plus the expense and the whole deal that goes along with that incarceration, the wreckage of the family, like you said, the people who are the collateral damage in the periphery.
Yes.
Because of that.
Well, and here's where I'm at with it is, with my daughter she's been in and out of, she's went through recovery, she's had relapse, she's back on her feet again now. Her next step is she's at that jumping off point. She's either going to OD and die, or she's going to go to prison because she's gotten 3 OWIs in the last 5 years, or she's going to make it. And she's right now at that point to where that's where I had to be to make it. I don't know what her future holds, but I know as a parent, it's been the worst pain I've ever felt in my life of being a parent of an addict. Being an addict was the easy part.
Yeah.
Being a parent of an addict is the most painful thing, but I also know that that's God's will. And if I believe in God's will with everything in me, with all my heart, why am I out here trying to fix, manage, control her life anyway?
Yeah.
So after her last relapse, I completely turned it over, and I'm powerless. And I can make suggestions, but I have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
It's all on her.
Yeah, that's... Okay, I'll hesitate to say it because I'm worried a little bit the manifestation kind of stuff. But my kids are young enough that I'm not there. But I see things that scare me.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
And,
it's terrifying. It really is. But you have to come. You have to give it to God and really mean it.
Yeah, I mean Yeah, it's those lines, that powerful book of 1935. The things like, you're gonna have to. Is God real or not? Is a couple other ones come across to my head while you were sharing, but.
So do you want to introduce Samantha, a volunteer? Or?
Sure, Samantha. Would you like to talk a little bit? What we have here is Samantha's here with Lisa and I, and she's been sitting here listening to Lisa's tell her story, and I can tell that she's emotional. That's one of the reasons why there's actually usually a limit to how long it takes. It's about how long I can go without a bathroom break too. So so Lisa's going to step out for a minute, but Samantha's here. You have to pull that close to you, like about this far away is the best way.
Good.
So would you like to introduce what you do here, and what are you, maybe whatever? Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
All right, my name's Samantha. My sobriety date is June 1st, 2015. My drug of choice was heroin, pretty much everything but opiates. I started using whenever I was 19. I got pregnant and I had my son, and I ended up having congestive heart failure.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know I was dying, and I went back to the hospital the next day, and I had a lot of PTSD from that. And I had a C-section, so they gave me pain relievers, and I realized that quieted everything in my mind, all the anxiety, all that. And I was just off and running from there. I mean, and it took a lot. It took me losing my kids, being homeless, losing everything. And I went to Indianapolis to Harbor Lights? Have you heard of that place?
I have not.
Yes, and it was actually faith-based recovery. And it was amazing. It changed everything for me. And we were listening to Big Daddy Weave Redeemed, and I don't know how to explain it, but I just felt the most calm I've ever felt in my life. And I was bawling, crying, and I was shaking, but I was calm. And God just told me, you're going to be okay.
Wow.
We got this. You don't have to worry anymore. And I've been sober ever since.
Very cool. So how did you end up down here? Is this where you're from?
Yes.
Okay, but she was up to Indianapolis. No, I mean,
I'm
and
from
I'll tell you,
Jeffersonville.
just as a opener, I really am interested because I struggle to get female recovery stories. I don't really know exactly what is up with that exactly, but I will put an open invitation to people who have a recovery story to tell. I want to hear them because I think that needs to be out there for other people. And I guess maybe I'd say it this way. The recovery stories are available out on the net, frankly, are a little dated, not unlike the big book, in the language in the big book. A lot of people today have trouble getting their heads around those older stories and that older type of recovery that was going on. There's something completely different going on today.
Absolutely.
And that's another one of my missions here is like to update this recovery message.
Right.
And bring it forward. You just have trouble relating to some old dude that's talking in 1950 about.
Exactly, because things are way different today.
So I would like to hear your entire story. That's what that got around to come full circle back would be an invitation to tell your story on the podcast. So I don't want, my point here is we're probably not going to get into a complete thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But so you were from here and you ended up going to Indianapolis for recovery, and then you came back here after?
Yes. I just went there for detox, actually.
Okay, all right.
And then I came home.
Yeah, I came back here. So were you a resident here?
I was not.
Okay.
I did not do a halfway house. I wish that I would have. I was being too stubborn. You get a sisterhood here that's just incredible, and I missed out on that.
Well, I fell into a brotherhood of men in my home group that are not like that, and it's everything to me because like this whole community thing is this level where we're willing to step in front of bullets for one another. I mean, a closeness, a community. The book says something in the back of it that I always like to talk about. It says He will help you, and and when it says He, it's referring to God, higher power. He will help you create the fellowship you crave. And I've heard a speaker from that had a touch me say, I never knew that's really what I was craving that whole time when I was using and doing all the things I was doing. What I was really craving was a connection with God's other children.
Right.
And through recovery and these guys that are in my life today. So I can understand how when you come into a place like this and you get, well, it's a battle buddy kind of thing. It's like coming out of war together, and you've bonded when you do that, I think.
Oh, yeah,
That's my
definitely.
perspective.
But I'm grateful for Lisa and her letting me come and do some service work here and spend time with these girls. Because then I get a little bit of piece of that, a little piece of that. And
Yeah. So what do you do here specifically?
I
You mind sharing
monitor.
all
I
that?
just come and make sure the girls are, following the rules and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And
Keep an eye on them. We certainly
I
need that.
guess.
That's a big thing of recovery is instilling some discipline.
Yeah.
Can you be where you said you're going to be? Are you doing what you said you're going to be doing?
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've had an opportunity to be down here a couple of times, and actually had a sponsee of mine spoke here at one of the meetings one night that I came and sit in on. I think it was a Thursday. I can't remember if it was a Thursday night. I don't remember, but there was a meeting that he got invited to share down here, and he said that I could come with him. And it's another one, some more of this. Some people would like to call them coincidences when I get to come down and hear my sponsee share his message, and because it's a little bit contrary, he's to come down here and he shares his message to the women in a women's recovery home, which there's some things behind that are bigger than us too.
Absolutely.
That was really cool. So thank you for sitting in here. Thank you for sharing your recovery with us a little bit. One of the things I do is at the very end, if there's any concluding thoughts, Lisa or Samantha, either one, if you have a concluding thought, any kind of thing you want to close with, and if you don't, that's okay too. I tell you what, I've really just been totally, you'll have to pull that closer to you if you're going to talk to it too. I really have enjoyed sitting here with you today. I really do feel, some kind of, you might, I just feel drawn to say, I just felt a connection with you from the beginning, and it just touches my heart to be a witness to what God does through other people, and to be able to, like I said, I want to make sure that when I'm sharing on here, I want to be real clear that none of this is me. I am not
Amen.
capable. It sounds a lot because I'm doing a lot of me. I talk, right? I'm sharing my experience, but I try to be real clear that this is not me.
Yes. Well, I feel there's a connection too, Dan, because a lot of times, I look back on the people that I first met in recovery that made an impact on me, and you have as well. You and Happy and a lot of people that I met back then. It seems like we kind of hang on to that, and especially that we're growing together. We're both sitting here 6 years later, still sober, still helping others, and I love y'all, and it's like we're a little family. But my last thing to say would be, if you're struggling with addiction or alcoholism or whatever your problem is, we love you, and we'll love you back to life, and get help. If you go somewhere and you don't feel the connection, go somewhere else. Don't give up. And thank you for asking me to be on your show.
Yeah, well, thank you. I always close, and I took this from Happy, and what's funny little thing is, I'm starting to get and I feel I'm just embarrassed. I have trouble saying. So at times I picked up some things and said it that I picked up from somebody else, right? I've never made any of this stuff up, but Happy pointed at me one time when I was struggling, and he knew it, because they see through us when I'm trying to pretend like I'm okay. And he pointed at me, and I was really offended. And he kind of pointed at me, and he said, thing is, Dan, he said, you must participate in your own recovery. And today I say, when I close and I share and I say thank you for allowing me to participate in my recovery today.
Amen.
And that's become a closing thing. And I was at a meeting yesterday, and the speaker closed with that and winked at me when he said that. So I always close my podcast saying that, and I took it from Happy. Happy's taught me a lot of things, and that's another one of the close people who have been impacted by recovery greatly. There's a really giant pile of people that impacted my recovery. I wish I could I try to make sure, we call it good amends, to make sure and go thank those people for having that impact on me. Instead of not, I'm gonna go do my amends to the people that I hurt and harmed, yes. But I think it's equally important to go around and thank the people that had the positive impact on me too, and we
Yes.
count that as amends in our lives. I will hit one more thing. Thank you so much for being here. I've just I have a feeling, and I'm going to leave it off the tape. Spiritualunderground.org. You can go out there, see pictures and links to and some show notes and links to the podcast. And there's, again, once I want to make sure that I tell you that there's a contact me page in there that you can email me if I can help you in your recovery, or if I can point you in a direction. I want to be able to do that. And and I also I invite feedback. Let me know what you think about the podcast. What you like, what you don't like. That's the only way I can get better. Music is by Darren Frank, wrapped around both sides of this podcast. Any more information on him, you can use that contact me page. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone is available at Amazon.com. And DTMWW.net, DTM Woodwork. Lisa, let me hit just real quick the breakaway. There's ways to for those who feel drawn to donate whatever, contribute to these efforts that you have that are saving lives. I'm going to put that stuff in the show notes so people hear that. Do you want to run down a little list of the things you're involved in real quick, just so we can get them one more time on the air, and then also that'll help me go back and make sure you give me all the information later.
Okay. Basically, it's a breakaway recovery home in New Albany, Indiana, and I think it's Breakaway Recovery New Albany. I'm sorry, I'll have to get that.
I will get those links, and they'll be on the notes. I'll have it so where people can click on those things.
And then also, there's a Grace House, which is a women's recovery home in Crawford County. It's in Marengo, Indiana. They need a lot of support too. So if you're from that area and you need some help, that's a good place to go. And then the Constructing Our Future, which is you was going to get that link on there too, in Indianapolis,
Yep.
which is a good thing for women. This is all women recovery-based things. The breakaway phone number is 812-941-4177 is our office number. If you would like to call Janice B. And ask for applications, come over and talk with us and see about getting on our waiting list. We do have a waiting list because it's an action thing. You have to be clean and sober for 30 days. Our waiting list fluctuates, so if you're really serious about your recovery and you want to come by and see us, write us letters for people incarcerated, or come and show how bad you want it, and miracles happen every day.
Yeah.
So that's about it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Lisa. I can say with my heart today, and you said it earlier, I don't know that I ever could truly love people before recovery. And I love you, Lisa. It's been a pleasure to walk beside you and watch what you're doing.
Thank you, Dan. I love you too.
Always tried to be just who they wanted. Always tried to do everything they said. Only did the things they would approve of. Lock away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a robot. Became a trophy for mom and dad. But inside you want more. Everything you've been this time.